Welcome to another edition of Irish Illustrated Insider. It is Monday, May 12th, and today you're joined by Tim Priester of Irish Illustrated and Drew Mentok as well, and John Bryce of Football Scoop and Irish Illustrated. And guys, the podcast jinx did not get us today. Notre Dame announced its three-night prime time home schedule about an hour prior to this recording. I was starting to think back when the last time it could have been, and then I forgot 2018 had three night games. So that not too long ago, but it's an interesting one. First time ever Tim Priester with Navy at night in Notre Dame Stadium.
Yeah, I didn't expect that one. I didn't expect any of them other than Texas A&M and M and USC, but we'll have a third with Navy. And then, of course, the other games, Purdue, Boise State, NC State, and Syracuse, all are 3:30 Eastern time. Kickoff, the days of something a little bit earlier than that are probably gone. Those were always kind of nice to have something a little bit earlier in the day. But yeah, A&M, that's not a surprise at all. That'll be prime time, just like last year's game against them was. Well, no, I guess it'll be week two, but yeah, not a big surprise, of course, other than Navy.
Yeah, I mean, I thought there was, I thought with certainty that A&M and USC would be night games. I thought there was a chance for a third. I hadn't studied the other schedules around the country closely enough or looked at the Big Ten schedules, particularly on some of those Saturdays to see what would be a natural lead in for Notre Dame to have a third night game. So a little surprised that it's Navy. But as you alluded to, TP, we're going to get more and more of that. Probably gone are the days of any noon kickoffs, even though there's a whole bunch of noon TV windows now. That's just something that Notre Dame fights against and doesn't want to do. And Notre Dame commands a TV audience that allows it still to have more sway than a lot of programs and when its games kick off.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think, yeah, I mean, like you, I was disappointed. No 2:30 starts. So I always look forward to
We
those.
get we gave up on noon kickoffs a long time ago.
I
Two
was hoping
thirty,
like the new Big
two
Ten
thirty.
deal with
Oh,
NBC
Exactly.
oh,
would
yeah,
get
yeah,
them
yeah,
some noon, you know? Yeah,
Yeah.
other than that, I gave up 20 years ago on those, but it was it would be nice. Drew,
But I've always been
you
told,
prefer 2:30, right, Drew? You've got to
Yeah,
prefer 2:30.
yeah,
yeah.
I definitely enjoy the 2:30 games, and that's honestly the first thing I looked for. And then when I didn't see that, I then looked for the night game. So,
Oh,
uh,
I clicked on the link, and the first thing I saw was Navy 7:30, and that's just I was like, I don't need to read the rest of this thing. There's no reason for me to keep going anymore on this one because that's a bit much. But
And the
yeah,
yeah,
reason the
but
reason that we in the media say 2:30 is because it's just that it's that hour that you gain, and it allows you to, when you finally get home, maybe to catch
yeah, you
the
get home at
late
10.
night games from the start.
You get home at 10 at the 2:30 game. It's a big
Yeah,
difference at 11 because you're just yeah, that's just doesn't work out.
yeah.
yeah,
We're selfish.
but I did look at it like Indiana, Penn State play that game. Like I assume there just wasn't any other good like Big Ten games for NBC to want to schedule that day, but it's not a bad slate. So it's interesting that they wanted that to be one of Notre Dame's night games against Navy, who I mean has been playing better. But yeah, that definitely stands out. And I also think overall it's just kind of an interesting home slate. Like there is like the marquee matchup in Texas A&M, but then there's no like Miami, Ohio this year or anything. And there's a lot of intrigue even for some of the other games like Syracuse and Jelly comes back.
Okay.
Boise State's like an exciting opponent. Plus Jaden Mickey comes back. Like there's like good storylines for all seven home games.
Well, and Navy, in fairness, Navy was a 10-win team last year. The service academies usually do very solid TV numbers, especially playing Notre Dame because there's so much tradition there. And like you noted, Drew, just not a ton of other contests that day that makes the Big Ten want to schedule Notre Dame any earlier in the day, especially needing something for that prime noon slot that it pays so much money or receives so much money for from Fox.
Also, let's be fair, if Navy and Notre Dame played at 3:30, you know what the attendance looks like there. Maybe this adds a little bit of juice to it. I know it could be colder, but November 8th, you're not pushing it quite as much as you would on the 15th and 22nd in South Bend. Um, I mean, Navy afternoon November has been a rough. It's been rough for Notre Dame since 17 when they kind of made up that one was sold out, and then ever since. Well, I guess COVID was the one that stopped the sellout anyway. But that's just a hard game to sell, I think, for Notre Dame fans, especially as Bryce pointed out last week, a 7 game home schedule, no Shamrock. You're trying to tell people that Navy is your game to come to at 3:30. Now maybe it is a little bit more. A guy that was really good against Navy, Tim Priester, and you saw him dominate them 3 times and save a game in 2013 was one-time Notre Dame Butkus Award winner Jalen Smith. After a year away from football, he is going to attempt to make the Los Angeles Raiders sign today. Not something I thought we'd wake up to.
No, I agree. It caught me by surprise. Good for him. We knew he was away from the game for a year.
And
Maybe body.
sporadically, right, for a couple years. I mean, he didn't
Yeah,
play more than
really.
5, 6 games,
Yeah.
really. Yeah.
So, I mean, I would assume that he has spent a lot of his time in the last couple of years, doing the best he can to get himself in a good enough shape, great shape to make one more run at it. We all enjoyed covering Jalen Smith. He's a real Notre Dame fit and a Notre Dame man. And, going into the Raiders situation, it's not like they have an overabundance of talent. So it could be a good situation for him.
Yeah,
And
I
he,
think it's interesting as you guys noticed, he was kind of away from the game last year. 2023, he was on three different rosters: the Steelers,
yeah, that's
the
right.
Raiders, and the Saints. Year before with the Giants. The year before it was the year he got, waived by the Cowboys, was also with the Packers and the Giants that year. So he's even in his, 3 year most recent years in the league, it's kind of been sporadic, but he's still only 29. He turns 30 next month, so he still has, he's still a fairly young player. So yeah, it's kind of interesting to see how he'll kind of get involved with other stuff. And he's also been somebody who's been really heavily invested into like his businesses and outspoken about that. So I think he's been pretty smart with that, but he's clearly never let go of keeping, I think he always says, keep the main thing the main thing. And even as he's done other things, it sounds like that's always been a focus.
Yeah, I was just going to say he's been around Notre Dame a fair amount in recent years. And even the last couple of years, he's made it to a couple of games, and people have asked him if he was going to um, try to make another go at it. And he was never quite ready to say he was completely done. So I do think that he has been targeting this. I think he's been working very hard for this. And like I said, when he came back and was around former players and been around, Peter Trematera in that box and some of those folks, he's always made it clear that he wasn't ready to say he was done yet. And so I think it's awesome that he's going to get this opportunity, and he's going to a place in the NFL where he'll have a strong leadership from Pete Carroll and a depth chart that will give him a great chance to make that squad.
Pretty sure you did a film review on Notre Dame's newest pledge, Tiki Hola, nose tackle. 3 out of 4, right? You got a whole defensive line already coming in for
Yeah.
2026 with the Irish and their strong side and Viper recruiting.
Yeah, I wasn't blown away the first time I looked at the highlight film with Tiki Hola. The more you watch him, though, I think there's some things that, like, somebody asked me, can he be the next Howard Cross the third? Well, I don't know about that. But there are some things that I really like about him. Number one, he is in tremendous physical condition. Whether he's 280, 285, somebody lists him as 300, we don't know that yet. But one thing I do know is that he's in great physical condition. So, any pounds the additional pounds that he would need to put on at Notre Dame, I think his body can accommodate it because he looks like he's a guy that's in great physical condition with low body fat, and so could add a little bit of extra weight for nose tackle. You're always a little bit concerned about when you start by saying undersized nose tackle. Although there are reports out there that he's been listed at 6'3", even as much as 6'4". So what's the truth? I don't know, but I do know this: he's in great shape. He's really quick off the football. He's a get up field kind of guy. I don't see a ton of lateral movement from him, so he's not a guy that's going to get maybe 7.5 sacks like Riley Mills did this past year. But I think he's a penetrator. And when you're a penetrator in the middle of the line, and most of his work's been done in a three-man front on the outside in high school. But when you're a penetrator, if you're doing that on the collegiate level, you're creating opportunities for defenders to your right and left to make plays. So hope that his body can accommodate the additional weight. He's listed as the 311th player in the country. I think he has upside to 250 to 300 if we can throw out some
Yeah, I was gonna say,
some numbers out there that
name
I
the
mean,
60 you're taking off of that, Tim
I'm
Priester,
just
right
saying,
now.
I'm using the numbers as a guide based upon what we see year after year
Yeah,
after
of
year.
course, yes. I love that when they say he's overrated. All right, well, tell me, especially in our countdown. You guys are way underrating him. All right, well, tell me who you're moving down because now you have to be mean to somebody too if you think everybody's underrated. A couple days ago, Ross Dellinger of Yahoo Sports sent out a tweet that affected Notre Dame fans greatly. There was growing support for a 16-team college football playoff. I don't think that's a surprise, but when it's, as Dellinger pointed out, the 16 teams could be comprised of four SEC, four Big Ten, two ACC, and two Big 12, one group of six, and three at large. That, in effect, Drew Mentok cuts Notre Dame's chances at an at-large more than in half. I mean, technically it's seven right now, and that goes down to three with this new proposal.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting. Obviously, Notre Dame wants more shots if they're having maybe a down season. I do think it's interesting though, because they're also with the 14 schedule, they're also talking about having a similar schedule where it would just be only one at-large shot. So it does sound like based on, previously I think we thought maybe 14 teams would be better, but that would only be if they kept this other format. So it does sound like it's almost you want to root for, if you're a Notre Dame fan, root for 16 teams because you want to make sure there's more than a couple at-large spots in there. So that will be interesting. I mean, it is noteworthy that if the Big Ten and the SEC do get, four spots each, those are the teams that have a lot of teams up there that, would potentially be eligible for at-large if they weren't that, compete for that. So like those teams are going to have a lot of playoff teams anyway, so it wouldn't necessarily hurt Notre Dame. It's, kind of how it works out and who they're competing against for the at-large spots would be the excess of those four spots for those conferences.
It's maddening though because the Big Ten got four teams this past year in the first ever 12-team playoff, and the SEC got three. But just ridiculous that they want the guarantees. Like let it be determined season by season and earned on the field. It does not need to be guaranteed beyond. Or if they are adamant that teams that make the conference championship games are going to qualify, then I get that. So then you could look at that and say six bids between those three leagues for the six teams that make the conference championship, and then make the stuff be earned. But it drives me nuts that we're at a point where they're essentially holding the sport hostage and saying it has to be this way or we're going to take our ball and go home. And if it just means more, and everyone who listens to this podcast regularly knows I'm from SEC country, but if it just means more, then prove it on the damn field and quit asking for guarantees. It absolutely, to quote the great Peter Griffin, grinds my gears.
I think, I mean, that's what's wrong with college football. If something like that passes, you're absolutely right, John. I mean,
yeah, if you deserve five, you deserve five, but you don't deserve four no matter what.
Right, exactly.
That's exactly it. I think that's crazy, and that's when people talk about things that are wrong with college football. That would be something that would be wrong with college football if you implemented that. As it relates to Notre Dame's independence, wake me when Notre Dame puts out a statement saying it looks like our independence is in jeopardy.
Well, yeah.
I've never read that statement. I've been doing this for 43 years. Notre Dame still has a clear path to the playoffs and all the criteria that they're looking for. You got to.
I do have one top. I have one thing. I mean, what Jack Swarbrick had said in the past: as long as we have a path to the playoff, independence is pretty safe. But one at large is tough.
No doubt about it. And that's why that shouldn't happen. That's crazy. That shouldn't happen. So now you're tilting the field so far in the direction, essentially the SEC and the Big Ten, that why don't you two just split off and have your own damn league if that's what you're trying to do?
They might.
Or
they might.
Yeah.
They might.
What if Notre Dame is 5-0 or 6-0 against ACC foes in a given year, and the two teams that play in the title game have 3 and 4 losses or something crazy like that? Then you're going to guarantee one of those ACC schlubs a spot over Notre Dame? Again, like, sports are supposed to be the ultimate merit-based endeavor, and they're trying to take the merit out of it. And I mean, it's like upward basketball. Like, they just want guarantees and like participation trophies for all. And the SEC has continued to whine about either South Carolina or Ole Miss not getting into the playoffs last year. Ole Miss lost at home to Kentucky. That was Kentucky's only SEC win. And again, podcast listeners here are very familiar with what I think about Kentucky football. And then South Carolina had terrible losses too and gagged away a game at home in the fourth quarter to LSU, among other things. And then Ole Miss turned around after it had recovered from losing to Kentucky and lost to a Florida team that at that point in time had barely decided it wasn't going to fire Billy Napier and was starting a true freshman at quarterback. So spare me the drama. You got what you earned last year. And oh, by the way, the SEC had newcomer Texas actually win a game last year in the playoffs. Neither Tennessee nor Georgia did.
Well, I
remember the
do
Go
wonder
ahead, Drew.
too, like the other conferences, like setting the standard where you surrender this much power to those conferences. I know they sound like a memorandum of understanding, saying they kind of have the power to make this decision for 2026, the SEC and the Big Ten. So it is, you know, setting it up where they're going to be able to kind of do what they want in the future too. And you're kind of bowing to them right now is a way that, you know, could be cause for concern going forward. And I get that they have maybe some leverage in the sense that, as you said, John, they might want to just be by themselves, but like you're all maybe you're making it easier for them to create that down the road too. So
Yeah, and I would point out that I think a lot of this, and we wrote about it on Football Scoop late last, maybe 10 days ago or last Monday and Tuesday, coming out of the DFO meetings, that the move to 14 and 16, according to people at those meetings, was imminent and very much expected. And that was coming from NCAA officials that we spoke with down at Dallas. So we had touched on that early last week as well. But don't ignore the fact that not only is the SEC doing this to preserve its own interest in the playoffs, and fine, that's what it's supposed to do. But it's also doing this so that it can move forward and have a 9-game conference schedule, which is just going to keep more of the money in the SEC because the teams and the coaches don't want to go to a 9-game schedule if they feel like they're going to be punished and only going to get maybe 2 teams into the playoffs when they feel like they're the big bad SEC and should get 3 or 4 teams. So this is not only self-preservation on the SEC's part when it comes to playoff bids, but then it's also the SEC positioning itself to attempt to be able to have a 9-game league schedule, which in turn is then going to cause programs like Notre Dame and other programs that have non-conference tilts scheduled with the SEC down the road to lose some of those games. So I think it's people point out that 2029 Notre Dame schedule that's maybe got Texas and Alabama and somebody else significant on it. I'll be stunned if both those SEC teams are still on there, and it wouldn't surprise me too greatly if the schedule just gets completely revamped.
Tim Priester, final topic for segment one. On Thursday, we talked about a 12-game home-and-home series with Clemson, which is always fun. We like Greenville, and we like Clemson Notre Dame games. However, I would like to point out that Clemson, South Carolina, is not actually located in Manhattan Beach, and how that might affect our lives going forward every other year.
No, it's not, Tim. And again, being selfish, we would miss out on something like that. But there certainly are indications now that are coming towards Irish Illustrated that the Notre Dame USC series is probably in jeopardy moving forward. That's pretty hard for us long-term, long-time observers of that series to accept, but it is what it is, and it's USC moving to the Big Ten and all the travel to already going to the Midwest and beyond the Midwest for the Big Ten. So, that's unfortunate, but this is just the nature of the game now, and you may only have 1 or 2 more shots at this, and it is what it is.
Drew, you were mentioning that nothing scheduled for 2027 yet. This could be USC's last trip in.
right, yeah, yeah. So that I mean, it's as we mentioned earlier, it's a night game. It could only magnify the importance of, if you're looking for a game to come this fall. This could be an important one. Obviously, I think this is the 96th meeting between the two programs, so it could be one of the more significant ones, even if USC is kind of coming off of a bad year. There could be a lot kind of riding on this in terms of significance.
Before we go to segment two, Priester, I'd like to announce that if the USC game in 2026 on the road is Notre Dame's last one scheduled there, I'll be staying till Tuesday, so we will have our podcast
That's
Monday just from the hotel. It'll be fine. That's no problem right there.
that's fine. Before we end the segment, I do want to drop in a couple things that I don't think will come up in segment two. Jonas Walton, the running back, is expected to make a decision this week. I think most people anticipate him choosing Notre Dame, which would give them a nice 1-2 punch at running back in the class of 2026 with JV Osborne. And also the lacrosse team getting a little revenge for the Notre Dame football team by hammering Ohio State yesterday at Ohio State as the number 4 seed. And now Notre Dame advances to play number 5 seed Penn State. So we got a little bit of a football flavor to what's happening in the lacrosse program right now.
That's beautiful symmetry there. Good stuff, TP. I like that.
Still doesn't feel even to me, but that's okay. That's a good job for the lacrosse team is one up on them.
Tom
Looking to upgrade your.
Zwiller's
I'm sorry, Priester, go ahead.
No, I was going to say Tom Zwiller's going to take issue with that.
Yes, it doesn't feel. It should not feel even anyway. So
nobody covers lacrosse like my guy Tom.
There's no such thing as evening that last one out. Looking to upgrade your wardrobe? Founded by Notre Dame alum Go Wang, you've seen ESQ's custom clothing on the player walk and all of your favorite players and coaches. With more than a decade of making the best bespoke clothing available, ESQ will help you look and feel your best. From a perfect fitting suit or sport coat, shirt or bomber jacket, or that perfect tuxedo for wedding season, check out esqclothing.com and book an appointment to upgrade your wardrobe today. Mention Irish Illustrated and get 10% off your entire purchase. That's esqclothing.com. We'll be back with segment 2, Burning Up the Boards.
This is segment 2, Burning Up the Boards. We start with a question from NDBG SoCal. With our new NFL business model, who is determining which high school athletes to offer? Is it the position coaches with the final say?
I mean, the final say is always hard because you figure Mike Martin is the one that says this person's a take or not, but I always go back to what BK said. People hate it when I say that, I'm sure. But it makes a lot of sense if Mike Mickens is the best example, I'm going to use the strongest example, really thinks someone's a take, and Mike Martin doesn't, and you're Marcus Freeman, don't you lean towards Mike Mickens? As opposed to, let's say Notre Dame has a new tight ends coach someday, and he thinks someone's a take. Maybe you don't lean towards that. I don't know. JB, your thoughts on that? I mean, what if Mike Mickens says this guy's a take, and Mike Martin's like, I don't know about that.
Yeah, I think I think if you're Notre Dame, I wouldn't ignore Carter Allman. I think Carter Allman is a huge part of the evaluation process and his collaboration with Mike Martin. So I think you go through a number of layers before you're even getting the prospects to the assistant coaches and saying, we feel like this guy's an offer. So I think you've gone in depth, or I use you generically, Mike Martin and Carter Allman and their staffs, Matt Jensen in that group as well. They've watched a lot of film and studied every prospect before they're going to coaches and saying, we're ready to offer this guy. And then Marcus Freeman's going to have the ultimate say over who does or does not get offered. But I would underscore that the grass is pretty well cut by the time it gets to that point by Mike Martin and Carter Allman.
Yeah, I talked to Eric Thomas, our recruiting aficionado at irishillustrated.com, before this, and he said it's, his understanding is, it's still a lot of ways up to the position coach on who gets the final offer, especially at certain positions like quarterback. But he does wonder if, bringing also in another guy on the staff, Jordan Blake, his understanding is he's a guy who at Colorado put together their recruiting boards and stuff like that too. I know he's the director of player personnel now, but he might have, more input. So there's probably a lot of collaboration, as JB just noted, to kind of get to things whittled down and who's a fit and all that other stuff too. But I do think a lot of that final decision making would come down to Marcus Freeman and the position coach.
Yeah, I got to think Freeman breaks all ties, right? And I agree with you, Tim, about Mickens.
Yeah,
why would you, how could you question his insistence that they offer a particular cornerback?
No, that's true. I mean, that's tough. And even BK said, it's like, I gave myself one. Marcus Freeman probably gets more than one. Mike Mickens gets at least one, in my opinion. So next question from @Daisy If You Do. Wondering if JB has heard anything about Notre Dame's new wall size technology, in quotations.
Yeah, love that question. And Daisy, if you do, I'm assuming is a Tombstone reference, and if it's
Tombstone?
not,
Mhm.
it should be a Tombstone reference.
Yeah.
You actually can read about it. I have a story up on Football Scoop that just went up late Friday afternoon, early evening about some of the major technological advancements unfolding for college football. But the picture with that story talks about the walk through wall. And it's new technology that right now only about 7 or 8 college football programs have, and Notre Dame is chief amongst them. And it's billed as life size kinesthetic learning tool, and you have LED or projection options, and you can customize it. But literally, you can turn the entire wall of your team room into a life-size walk-through diagrammable board, and so you're able to. It's just another advancement to take teaching to a top new level, and you're able to not only simulate a walkthrough, but you're seeing it in full proportion, in life size proportion, mimicking depending on your space. If your team room is 30 yards wide, then you've got 30 yards to do a walkthrough or whatever. So it's a significant new advancement. Like I said, Notre Dame is one of only about 7 teams right now using it. There's maybe 15 NFL teams using it. So pretty elite company for Notre Dame. And Notre Dame also just rejoined the Teamworks Hub, which is pretty ubiquitous. They now, with Notre Dame's addition, Teamworks now has every power conference and major college football program in America inked to its program. It's the app that lets coaches and players and staff communicate literally for everything. And key to note is that Teamworks moving forward is also going to be able to allow schools to directly pay their athletes their NIL money or their revenue share money with the Teamworks wallet function. And that's a huge deal because it means guys and gals are going to be getting direct deposits on the app on their phone from their universities, assuming the next step of the House settlement is pushed forward this week, and all that starts by July 1st.
Speaking of walkthroughs, JB, I insist upon a walkthrough of this facility when it's complete, when they unveil it, because it's going to be spectacular.
Oh yeah, unbelievable. The Shields Family Football Hall is just going to be just remarkable. Like we've noted before, about $150 million project, and Notre Dame, being Notre Dame, has that project pretty well completely funded, and we'll have it paid for by the time the doors open. So, with that, I bid you gentlemen adieu. I've got another commitment. I apologize for that. I appreciate everyone tuning in, and we'll catch up later again this week.
I know JB is actually he has to run off because he's got to grill some summer squash and asparagus because we found out his grilling he preferred the
That's
veggies on the
men.
grill. So
That's men
see you
talk.
later, JB. Have fun with that.
Yeah, that's Mentox Grill.
Or
What's on mine? Wagyu on mine.
Priester, I know that it is going to be a beautiful facility, but did you hear they got to wheel their food in from somewhere else still? It's terrible. I can't believe. I mean, how could you ever win a game? There's
I
just.
have I have not heard that, Tim.
Our next question
I have not heard that.
from ND Amos 22. What's one question we should still be asking about this team that isn't being talked enough about? And I think he means one question mark, probably. Would it be leadership, schedule, the defensive coordinator, handling playoff success, or JB's grilling NIL deal, which we don't have to touch on anymore because he bounced.
Drew, go ahead and jump in there.
I kind of think it's schedule. I mean, I think there's so much riding on their first 2 games. It really is kind of a significant thing. And I know we talk about the quarterbacks a lot, but with though a new quarterback starting, a first time starter for those 2 games is pretty significant. And also, as I kind of touched on earlier, there's not really, there's maybe no, potentially like top 15, 10 type program after that. But there really isn't a lot of like weak programs that are obvious, like, oh, should be an easy game for Notre Dame after that. I mean, NC State's been solid, as we touched on. Navy's been good. More recently, I mean, Notre Dame still handled them, but they're other than probably Purdue, who at least is going to have a coaching change. There's no team where I'm like that should be a 30, 40 point win, no problem. There's a lot of it's a quality schedule. It's definitely harder than last year, and I think. I mean, we don't want to talk about the schedule too much at this point. There's still plenty of other things for us to be discussing in time for that. But I think that is definitely something that's more significant than based on, time spent talking about it.
are there really things that we haven't addressed with 2 podcasts a week since the season ended? I'm
Yeah,
not
we
sure
we
that
talk a
they're.
lot about looking to find leadership. That's for sure. I
Well,
mean,
yeah, no,
yeah,
no doubt about it. And like and Andy Amos 22 asked about DC. I do think that we need to keep in mind, and but I think I've said this has been discussed that you look at as great as our opinion is of El Golden that first year, they had tremendous difficulty in the red zone. So there's always a transition with a coordinator. Mike Denbrock admitted that last year as to where they were going to be offensively in year one compared to year two. I don't I think we've said many times that the schedule looks much more difficult on paper than it did than last year's. We've talked about the leadership and who we think will step forward. Drake Bowen on defense. I think a Don Schuler's a guy that does that. I don't know if there's one thing that comes to mind for me that we haven't already addressed. Do you have something, Tim?
no, I don't. I would like to reiterate with the defense, like just when Al Golden tells you that Xavier Watts and Jack Kaiser are problem solvers on grass as it's happening, they don't even have to get to the sideline when a play goes wrong. The next play, it's fixed. I mean, the beginning of the season, that'll be tough for Drake Bowen and Adon Schuler
Yeah.
and Christian Gray and Leonard Moore. Like that's just a hard thing. Maybe it's not as natural. That's a great point you made about his first year, the red zone. Remember their goal to go, their first 16 goal to go
Yeah.
situations were touchdowns? It's
Yeah.
insane to think about with Al Golden. I mean,
And they would be, it'd be
yeah,
third and
on
long,
third down
fourth
every
and
time too,
long.
or third or fourth. It was just nuts. So the one thing I think helps a little is Ash gets keys to a humming machine. Denbrock was kind of overhauling or changing it because he had a new. I mean, the quarterback was 100% different. Riley Leonard's offense versus Sam Hartman's offense too. So I think that would be a little easier for Ash than it was for Denbrock coming in. I wouldn't think Ash is going to say to us in late August, well, I think our offense will really be improved by November. Our defense will really be improved by
No, I
November. Like
agree.
Denbrock was warning us, man. He was,
Yeah, no. And Ash has shown that he's pretty well versed in knowing what needs to be said when you're
yeah,
following a guy like Al Golden. But um, and I will say that maybe some of his decisions, his play calls will be questioned because that's
because he's
just the
not Al
nature.
Golden.
Yeah,
Yeah,
because he's not Al Golden, and Al Golden's decisions certainly were questioned when he had a double safety blitz at Ohio State
yeah.
in Marcus Freeman's first game as a full-time head coach.
Well,
So
also Ohio State when he didn't blitz on 4th and 19 or whatever, and it was Ramon Henderson backing up 22 yards at the goal line instead of the 3 yard line,
no,
which was
yeah,
the first down. Remember that was
yeah,
yeah. And Golden made a good point. He's like, I did not want to lose that game on a 50-50 jump ball because they have the receivers that can make you lose the game on a 50-50 jump ball. No matter
right.
how good Morrison is, Marvin Harrison could have gotten him once on a 50-50 jump ball. But yeah, that's tough because you could blame Al Golden for that one, but play the defense right, and it's probably a stop after an 18-yard gain. Our next question is from Shibe43. The offensive line is a group where there is thought to be quality depth and future starters sitting behind quality starters, and with eligibility remaining. Unlike other positions where running back roles can be used in rotation, how do you keep everyone engaged and at Notre Dame?
I I mean, I think this spring is a pretty good example of how that can work out well. I mean, you had, a first and second string offensive line made up of every, scholarship player, offensive lineman on the roster, including Devin Houston, who just got switched over. So I know some of that was, giving everyone a lighter load or dealing with injuries for some of the starters after the playoff run. But I think that helps a lot. And I think it's also worth noting that this is just a position group where culturally, like that matters more than, they're not really looking for guys who are like, I'm, this level, like they get good recruits, but they're not going after guys who are like, I'm coming in to, expecting to start right away. It really is more of like I think they use the term brotherhood and things like that more than anyone else. So I think those other things really stick out in terms of getting people to stay and people understanding, the prestige of that position group at Notre Dame too.
Offensive linemen are wired way differently than any other football player on the team. It's just it's a different group. It's they all, I mean, how many times have we heard through the years, oh, they eat together, they go to dinner together, they do everything together. That's the way offensive linemen are. And through the years, typically, historically, offensive linemen are some of the first ones to commit to schools. they're less likely to change their commitment to a school. They're just more patient in general. And look, if you were on the team last year, all you had to do was just witness what happened to Notre Dame's offensive line and how opportunities arose for the backup offensive lineman as things went along. So, hey, and as it relates to Devin Houston, that's the best thing that could have happened to him was being moved to the offensive line. Now he's not going to crack the lineup this year, but when this rung of guards moves on, then maybe he has a shot at it. I don't know. They'll continue to bring in great talent, but it's difficult because through the years offensive line coaches, they want five guys functioning as one play after play after play.
Yeah, but I think they all know now that's you want 15 games of five guys functioning as one. It's tough, like
No
you're
doubt.
gonna lose. You're gonna lose the days of. It didn't happen often, but I think the days of five starters for a season is just I don't know how you do that. Like, how do you not get rolled up on in a
You
physical
have you
practice?
you have to get luck. I mean, as far
Yeah,
as getting rolled
yeah,
up, that's it.
yeah,
That's just bad luck. I mean, you
yeah,
can't.
yeah,
Nobody can do. No trainer. Lauren Lando's
yeah,
not
yeah.
at fault when an offensive lineman gets rolled up and has to miss 6 weeks. That's just the nature of the position, and that it's just bad luck when that kind of stuff
It's
happens.
kind of this isn't bad luck, but like for Sam Pendleton to leave, the other guys graduated. For Sam Pendleton to leave, uh, he had to start to get that NIL offer from Tennessee too. Like they had to see him. I don't think you can come and look at Sullivan App. Let's say Sullivan Apter is going to be better than Sam Pendleton. There's no film for that. You can't have Tennessee looking at Sullivan Apter's film from what the Blue Gold game and some spot duty last year, like they had Sam Pendleton's film, and you can entice someone to leave a lot more. So you're enticing Sullivan Absher to leave with a new school,
Yeah,
not $400,000. I mean, that's a big difference.
certainly NIL, that erodes the patience of offensive linemen more than
Yeah.
what they dealt with previously.
Another offensive line question from T Maker. How is Ashton Craig's recovery coming along? This has probably been addressed, but I've just missed it. Do all of you expect him to be the starting center this fall?
I mean, go
Go ahead,
ahead.
Drew. No, go ahead,
Oh,
Drew.
I mean, Marcus Freeman said the only player he didn't anticipate being truly full go, I guess by the end of the summer is Cooper Flanagan. So,
Yeah.
based on that, maybe they're being optimistic, but based on that, you could say his recovery seems to be going well. And he, hurt his knee in September, so that seems reasonable for him to come back. I mean, ultimately, I expect him to be the starting center, especially if he is, really healthy by the end of the month, by the end of summer, but. At the same time, I mean, Sullivan Absher, I think we saw some really good things from him in
Yeah.
the spring. I mean, he's definitely a different, he's 6'7", he's a big body there playing center, but he's going to have some competition and he's going to be a little behind. And he's, ultimately doesn't have a ton of experience. I mean, I know we kind of look at him as a kind of, recognized starter, but he didn't come in until the end of 2023 and then obviously got hurt early last year.
You know, we, I mean, we've been conditioned with ACLs. I've always said ACLs and Achilles are the ones where the guy's not at his best, for 2 years, really.
Mhm.
So you're cautious with Ashton Craig, but when they tell you that he's full go going into the summer, it's just how does the knee respond when you're full go going into the summer? Do you have setbacks along the way? Do you tweak it here or there? I think a lot depends upon those kind of things. I don't think there's any doubt. I mean, barring a setback, that Ashton Craig will be the starter at some point. I think the question though is will he be the starter against
Right.
Miami at Miami? And I think that there's a decent possibility of that. And I talked to Ashton Craig. We had that great opportunity to interview players in New Orleans a couple days before the game and talk to him then. And maybe I'm a little bit more gullible than than most, but when I was done talking to him, I thought, you know what, he's probably going to be ready for the start of next season. But
Yeah.
barring setbacks.
Instead of speculating on this with Mitchell Evans since he got hurt October 27th, I no speculation. If I see Ashton Craig taking practices off in early August like Mitchell Evans did, I know that no matter what they say, they're just protecting the player. Because Mitchell Evans, we should have read the tea leaves when we were watching him in practices. that he wasn't going to be himself when they started the season. And he played 10 snaps against A&M and then like 20 against
Right.
Northern Illinois when they desperately needed him to catch the ball too. So if you see Ashton Craig, like, I'm not saying game practice number 3 the first time to go to pads or something, but if you're like, we show up for August 8th and August 12th and he's watching and they say, oh, he's fine, I will remember Mitchell
Yeah.
Evans this time.
Yeah.
That's
True.
Good call.
And there's a reason to rush Mitchell Evans back. They needed him more than they might need. I mean, you want Ashton Craig, but they at least have, I feel like better options than they did for behind Mitchell Evans last
they
year.
You have
really
a-
need
your
him.
point.
Yeah.
You have how big is he? 6'8". He keeps getting bigger, right, Tim? He keeps
Yeah,
growing.
every time we do
You
the
have
podcast.
you have a 6'8", 318-pound center, and I thought, seeing him in action in the blue gold game, which you don't put all total stock in the blue gold game, but just seeing the length and the width of him in the middle of the field is pretty damn impressive.
Our next question is from JJ Post. Last week, you guys touched on Schuler/Hurd's countdown placements and how it was quickly apparent that the former's play in limited spring access had been a bellwether. Who are some other candidates for a similar, we should have bought more into this retrospective come fall?
Yeah.
Good question. So Priester, it was about this time last year. We were like, oh, we misranked Don Schuler when we were doing it. Remember? That's one of the not the number one we've gotten wrong, because guys like freshmen, you have no idea, like Joe Alt and Leonard Moore at this point. But we just realized, like, we just put a lot of stock in Rod Hurd beating out Don Schuler, and we saw Don Schuler with our own eyes have a good spring, and they talked about him too.
Well, can you name another grad transfer that didn't
No, not
start?
well. I mean, the bad ones back in the day before they had good portal acquisitions. But you're right. Rod Hurd seemed like, and he was a good player as it turns out.
Right.
He was an invaluable player. So for this year, like, I guess not saying who we've misranked, but who do we see where you think? I guess mine would be a healthy James Flanagan, because for his entire last 2 months of recruitment and signing day, I thought if he's healthy, he can be the number 2 tight end next year.
Well, it's interesting that you mentioned that, Tim, because one of the guys I was going to say, not that he was here in the spring, but Ty Washington.
Yeah.
There has to be a ton of confidence in what Ty Washington is going to bring to the field for Notre Dame this fall. Otherwise, they would have brought in another high school tight end, right?
You would think, or even another graduate transfer tight end.
Or another graduate transfer. The injury to Cooper Flanagan is significant because that dude was ready to play as a freshman. He's he's a top blocking tight end. And so that hurts definitely. Luke Telich, but see,
Yeah.
he flashed so much in the blue gold game that's not
Well, there you
not
go.
real
That's
surprise.
a Stroman Talich. That's another Hurd. That's another Schuler Hurd thing directly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, I wrote with them, those, two specifically, like it maybe, last year, I mean, Schuler played, I think he was like 4th or 5th on the team in defensive snaps. Like maybe that will be a little more divided between those two, given the different skill sets that you have between Talich and Stroman too. Like there's a lot of different things you can do with those people. And I mean, Talich in a goal line situation, based on what we saw in the blue gold game, seems like a no-brainer potentially at this point. So I think he's somebody who wrote down, and I mean, I don't think I have Jalen Sneed ranked too low, but maybe I'm kind of starting to think of this as, I mean, obviously high in KVA, but this is kind of a contract year for him too. Like he put on the weight. He's finally really going to do everything the right way, and there's just going to be some things that he can do on the field that, I mean, we're getting to a point where a lot of Notre Dame linebackers are exceptionally talented, but kind of a guy that's special in doing things we haven't seen all the time from him too.
It's difficult to just like come up with the exact comparison to the situation that was created with Schuler and Hurd last year. But and Tim, I think you and I are of the same mindset here with Carson Hobbs. I mean, I think Carson Hobbs is the real deal. I think I'm not saying he starts, but I think he plays an integral role in the secondary this year. Jason Onye, do we believe what we saw in the Jersey scrimmage, or do we believe what we saw in the blue gold game? Elijah Burris, I think, is another one that I've suggested that maybe he could be, the 5th or 6th wide receiver. He was targeted a lot when practices were open and scrimmages were open to the media. I think he has an excellent chance to to be one of those guys beyond the top four wide receivers. Again, I don't know that there's an exact comparison, so
Yeah, I like the Talich one, and then Snead is a great point by
I
you,
think
Drew,
Snead's a good pick, Drew. I
because
like that.
I have zoned out so much for the last three springs of them telling me how much he changed his approach to the game, and then he didn't. That, but you're right. Contract year is a great way of putting it because he's the senior. He's going to leave and try to go pro after his senior year, even though he has 2 years of eligibility remaining, and he's betting on himself right now. I bet so. That's a very good pull.
We have a question from Clear Screen 25. I think that's a first. Tim, is it not?
Yeah, I don't remember that one.
Do you think Chris Ash will place a heavier emphasis on stopping the run as compared to Al Golden?
Go ahead, Drew, because I'm doing bad radio and looking at something really fast on the internet with last year's run defenses.
Yeah, so I mean, I'm gonna say no. I mean, heavier, maybe implies like a significant amount, but well, it's talking to this spring. Somebody asked him about his defense, and he's like, it's a nickel game. Basically, that's what
Right.
college football and the NFL has become, primarily nickel. Now, whether you call it 4-2 or 3-3-5 or whatever, you're typically going to have five DBs on the field when it matters. The rest of no matter what the rest of the structure is. So, I mean, he's made it very clear. Like, I think even if he plays more zone, there's going to be, five defensive backs in the field a significant amount of time this fall, which is also what we saw under Al Golden.
I see 10 teams in the playoffs last year. There were 12, if I remember correctly, that finished ahead of Notre Dame, with better run defenses than Notre Dame last year. Um, that's an interesting thing. But Tim Priester, this question I pulled really for you because you are, I believe, the person that asked Al Golden about a little bit better rush defense. Is there if there's any chink in a mid-season armor of a really good defense they had? And his point was you lose to explosives, not a team that pushes you around for half of a quarter.
Yeah, and he did say that, and I would also point to something that Chris Ash implemented this year, and I don't want to overplay it, and I don't want to speak beyond my depth of knowledge, but we did talk about and actually the strong side defensive ends brought it up that they were aligned a little bit wider, like a seven technique,
Hmm.
and there are multiple reasons for that. One that helps with a pass rush, but one of them is also to funnel the running game inside. And when you're funneling the running game inside, you're funneling them to a really, really good linebacker core. So does that constitute placing a greater emphasis on the run defense? I'm not sure exactly, but I would throw that out, number one. And number two, agree with what Drew said. I mean, it is a nickel game. And explosives is what really, really beats you. You've got to be sound against the run. And that's why having the linebacker core that they have is really important to them. And that's why you've got to come up with some kind of combination of those six defensive tackles that Marcus Freeman talked about the week after the blue gold game. You need those guys to be stout.
I think I've had the luxury of forgetting who all the playoff teams were last year because I can only count 10 right now in my head. But they're all ahead of Notre Dame. That's what happens when Notre Dame goes to the championship game. You don't remember the first round games that they were already well above. But look, 5 of the top 10 rush defenses in the country last year were playoff teams. So was number 13 in Texas, and so was number 21. Now, Notre Dame was 49 and Georgia was 30. I don't think 49, 36, and 31 are probably any different, really. Decimal points is what we're looking at here.
Pretty
But
much.
5 of the top 10 playoff teams were top run defenses. Some of it's the conference you play in, probably, because IU was 1, Ohio State was 3, if you start looking at it that way. Tennessee was 10. I actually would not have guessed that, which is always good to look back on these things. I would have thought Texas was higher. Oh, and Penn State was 9. So you're looking at 3 Big Ten teams in the top 9 in rush defenses, and Oregon is the one. I forgot Oregon existed. Oregon's the one's a little farther down the list. They're at number 38. So I do think it was an anomaly maybe when you're the 49th rush defense for Notre Dame to have such a great defense overall. So maybe they'll finish higher, but that doesn't mean you put a greater emphasis on it. It's also numbers are involved too. And they played Army and Navy. That'll do
Right,
it.
Right.
right,
Yeah.
right, right. That's forgotten as well. Not that they put up massive numbers against Notre Dame like we've seen so many
Yeah.
times
Yeah. It
in
wasn't
the
300 yet,
past.
but they
Yeah,
still get some. Yeah.
exactly. All right, we're going to wrap up with Irish from A2. And the question is, if you had the option of one of these statistical rankings being guaranteed next year for Notre Dame, Which would you prefer? A, number one nationally in rush offense. B, number one nationally in pass defense. Or C, top 10 nationally ranked in total offense.
I went with C. I mean, I think if you're looking at it statistically, I mean, there's a big room for improvement there. In terms of total offense, they had averaged 390 or 399.1 yards per game last year, which is 55th. Now they do have a playoff run that kind of brought that down those 4 games. But I do think if they could get up there where they're considered one of the top 10 offenses in college football, and I do look more so, I should clarify that, yards per play, they were 6.3 last year, which is 27th. So they're probably even a little better than what they're not necessarily a tempo team all the time, so they're not going to run maybe as many plays. But I think if they were up in the top 10 in terms of yards, that would be really significant because you kind of given, I mean, that the defense is going to be strong. And I think we saw last year, kind of to our last question, that you can be a really good defense even if you're not elite at stopping the run.
This is a hard one for me because like Notre Dame is the number one pass efficiency defense in the country last year, and they were in the national championship game. Notre Dame was the number one pass efficiency defense in the country the year before, and they were not a totally dominant defense, though they were very, very good, and that includes the Caleb Williams playing. Remember, he had to run for those touchdowns mostly. They were also number six, I just looked now, in 2018, a playoff team. And I'm guessing before the Clemson game, they're a few slots higher than number six because it does matter who you play at the end. Because, when you go play, like in 2020, Notre Dame finished their season playing Clemson and Alabama. Well, that kills all your stats if you're going to be
Yeah.
ranked very high. I don't know, man. I guess you have to look at this, say, you're not saying the other groups are going to be bad. You're just saying I guess I would take an offensive stat because I know the pass defense will be good. And it's okay if they finish ninth in pass defense. And if you tell me they're going to finish with the number one total offense, I don't know how they would miss out on the playoffs or lose playoff games until they get somewhere. So I guess that's mine too.
Yeah, that's kind of how I look at it. Although I want to talk about B. I would eliminate A, the number one ranked
Yeah.
rush offense, because then you're not balanced with the passing game, and that's not what should happen with Notre Dame this year. Top 10 ranked total offense, is that possible? I kind of think that it is,
Pretty sweet.
with the
Yeah.
offensive line, the potential of CJ Carr, and we know with the running backs, and I think Malachi Fields can make a
Yeah.
significant difference in that receiving core.
And Priester, this would be a top 10 total offense. And you're not playing Bowling Green in New Mexico like you were a top 10 total
Right.
offense. You're not playing Army and Navy in Northern Illinois. Like you are playing the teams you're supposed, that's what we said preseason. Northern Illinois would have been thrown in there. This is Purdue and Purdue last year, for crying out loud. These are viable opponents you're going against. If you're a top 10 offense, you did not pad your stats. You can't get 7,000 yards against Purdue. So, I mean, I think, that'd be a pretty good indicator.
Yeah. I hate to not pick a defensive
I
stat
do, I do
because
too. That's why I went right to it. But like,
right. Exactly. But they've done that in the past. Top 10 offense where you have run pass balance. Give me some of that.
we'll be back on Thursday, May 15th, for another edition of Irish Illustrated Insider. And hopefully, the timing of Notre Dame's next major announcement will be just like today's 2 hours before. We get to prep for it, put it on the podcast, and there are no jinxes. Until then, for Drew Mentok and Tim Priester of Irish Illustrated, I'm Tim O'Malley. Thank you for watching and listening.